Hey guys, welcome back to the channel McNallie Money, the new home of power mining analysis. In today's episode, Anthony Power and I are kicking off the week with a bang. We've got production results from Core Scientific, outmined any of the other companies in the space in the month of March. We've also got an exciting update from Soluna. We're going to be talking about the CEO search and the proposed Bitcoin mining ban in Paraguay that may have an impact on Bitfarms. I know a lot of you have been asking about that one as well. And a nice little update on the HPC front from our friends at IREN. So we've got a lot to go through. Highly anticipated episode here, you guys. Before we get into it, please take a second, hit the like button. I'm not feeling the best today. The likes would really help me out. If you're not already subscribed, McNallie Money, feel free to join. And let us know in the comment section below if you're currently holding any of these companies, what your thoughts are on the Bitfarms situation, and your outlook, as halving is now only a few weeks away. Now, with that being said, let's get into today's video. Okay guys, so that's right. Today's video, we've got a ton of news coming out to kick off the week. Not to mention the price of Bitcoin is flirting with all-time highs once again, Anthony. So a lot of these miners are up double digits in pre-market this morning. As you guys can probably guess, I'm still feeling a little under the weather, but Anthony got me up early to do this one and we're looking forward to it. So in today's video, we're going to be addressing some of the concerns coming out from Bitfarms. I know a lot of you have been reaching out to us about that, so we're going to go through that in a second here. But first, we wanted to do an update on Core Scientific and Soluna because they just came out with their monthly production results and we weren't able to capture them in last week's coverage. So Anthony, let's start off with Core Scientific. This one, we were anticipating their results. We were wondering if Marathon, CleanSpark maybe had an edge over them. It looks like Core Scientific was able to come out on top, just north of 900 Bitcoin. And what strikes me about Core Scientific, Anthony, is despite all the drama, the financial stress, the Chapter 11 emergence, the new leadership changes, this team has stayed remarkably consistent, almost 30 Bitcoin a day for the entire year. And their fleet efficiency, I had no idea that it was in the mid-20s. So in my opinion, they're doing a lot of things right, and I think they could have a really big year here. What were your thoughts on March production results?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great total to mine, and bear in mind, you've got a miner there in like Marathon Digital, you've got literally close to 10 exahash more, and you're quite right. The consistency of Core Scientific delivering close to 30 Bitcoin day in, day out for the majority of 2024, actually. So they mined 906 during March. They've mined a total of 2,825 for the first quarter, and that's the highest amount from any of the miners. That's about 14 more than Marathon have mined in their 3 months. So bear in mind, we relate to what happened in December for Marathon, where they had they mined over 1,850 Bitcoin in that particular month. Never really got anywhere close to that. In fact, they're operating about half that amount of Bitcoin now. But Core Scientific mined the most Bitcoin in 2022, mined the most Bitcoin in 2023, and currently mining the most Bitcoin in 2024. I'd have to say, if Marathon can, get their sites operating, they'll probably take some beating in 2024. They're not that far away from Core Scientific now, but this was about Core Scientific, and it's a good update. They also run a hosting business as well, and the hosting business, that actually mined 309 Bitcoin, and if you look at some of the the sort of those mid-tier miners, that's sort of like a similar amount to the likes of probably more than Hut 8 mined in the whole month. So that's a significant number as well. But you're right about the efficiency. So the efficiency for Core Scientific, it's now 26.85, and we've talked about what the average efficiency going in North America at the moment is closer to 35. So that's significantly low. It's about 33% lower than the average efficiency, and that's only going to improve because they've got more orders of machines coming through to get them to over 21 exahash, 21.8 exahash actually by the end of March 2024. So this amount of Bitcoin and the rise in the Bitcoin price is only helping the likes of Core Scientific. They do sell their Bitcoin on a regular basis, and they actually sold 981 Bitcoin during the month. We don't know exactly how much of a hodl they've got. So maybe what's happening is they are receiving some of their revenues from their hosting business in actual Bitcoin and are able to sell that at the same time, because they're selling more than their production in each month for the last 3 months. So that tells me that there's, they have had a small hodl, which is unlikely. Going through the Chapter 11, they would have probably been, liquidating everything to get bills paid and things like that. So I would suggest that they're probably earning some Bitcoin through the hosting business, selling that on top of their self-mine business, but really benefiting. I mean, we're talking 66.3 million in proceeds from selling those Bitcoins. That's going to help, where they need to be with regards to getting some of the bills paid in these early months and put them in a better position. But a really good update. If you're looking at daily rate, I mean, it was 29.2 Bitcoin every day. I mean, in February it was 30.8. So a slight reduction, and we know that the difficulty increase was about 4.8%. So that impacted all the miners. But in terms of revenues, if you think about what they sold in February, they sold 952 Bitcoin and got 46.7 million. And they've sold slightly more Bitcoin, 981, and got 66.3 million in revenue. So, the Bitcoin price is really helping, not just Core Scientific, but all the miners. But when you're mining 900 Bitcoin, it's really helping you.
It sure is, yeah. And I'm glad you brought up that $66 million figure, Anthony, because a lot of people in the comments in a response to Adam Sullivan's interview we did are saying, yeah, but the debt. And I was responding to those saying, yeah, but when you're making $2 million of revenue a day, Bitcoin mining, it doesn't take too long to start shifting the tide, right? And obviously we know with halving coming up here in a couple of weeks, that number is going to be reduced, but still a tremendous amount of cash being generated by this company. And I thought a very successful month for Core. So moving along here, Anthony, now we have Soluna Holdings. We just had John Belizaire on the channel, walked us through their business model, a very diversified business compared to some of the pure play miners we cover or discuss on the channel. They put out results as well, and a number of operational updates with all their various projects and business units. So this was another great one to see, Anthony. Again, one of the smaller miners here, but after talking with John, it seems like they have a very reproducible business model. They essentially talked about Dorothy 1 being their blueprint, and now with Dorothy 2, they're using that as kind of a cookie cutter template to really increase the efficiency, the speed of building these data centers. What were your thoughts on Soluna, Anthony?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. They are one of the smaller miners that we actually provide coverage to. They've in terms of mining Bitcoin, they've got two elements. That they've got a self-mining business which has a nameplate hash rate of about 817 petahash, so just below 1 exahash. But they've also got a hosted business as well, and they host some of the miners that we actually cover as well. So they've got a hosted hash rate of 1.6 exahash. So in terms of mining as a total, you're looking at about 2.5 exahash under their management. So in the month of March, they mined 37. So that was slightly lower than what they mined in February, but we've already articulated the fact that there was a difficulty increase, but also it appears that probably about 5% of the hash rate was not online for periods that month there. So, they had a higher average monthly hash rate during the month of February, which enabled them to mine a bit more Bitcoin. But actually, in terms of March, it's still probably the second highest month of the last sort of 10, 11 months. So it's still, it still means they're going in the right direction there. But you're right to say, on a number of their other projects, John was able to articulate where they're up to, and we can see, that Project Dorothy 1 has, executed an agreement with one of the hosting partners to expand the deployed fleet at the site and take advantage of the efficiencies identified in the design. So, that's a proprietary mining site. Project 2 is still awaiting approvals, and those approvals are nearly complete. They've also obviously going into the HPC business there, and they're installing their first GPUs now for their AI customer, getting ready for their operations there. So like many of the other miners we've covered, Soluna also looking to bolster some revenues from high performance computing, and that's really important. We've talked about some of the smaller miners doing that, steady revenues coming from non-correlated businesses to Bitcoin. Maybe the key thing that helps some of these miners get through and able to sort of like use them revenues to grow the mining fleets once we go through the halving and get more, the most efficient machines mining, because we know all the ins and outs of what happens post the halving. We've covered that in a number of podcasts.
Yeah, it's so interesting to me. It really comes down to the Bitcoin price and I guess your time frame for investment, because if you're a Bitcoin maxi, you're going to be wanting to invest in the pure play miners. You think this is the bull run of all bull runs. It may almost look at as a disadvantage for some of this diversification, but on the other side of the spectrum, if you're more conservative, you're more, I guess, logical and understand you can't predict the price of Bitcoin and it may not go on the bull run of all bull runs, then yes, these diversified non-correlated revenues, I think they make so much sense, Anthony, and they set these companies up for a longer time frame, because you don't have to worry about those big bear market cycles, right? So I personally am holding a variety of these companies. I think both approaches, HODL, no HODL, diversified, not diversified, vertical integrated, asset light, I think there's benefits to all of them, but it's sure interesting to see it all develop.
And just to put into context, the effect of the Bitcoin price can't be underestimated for these miners. So when you've got a miner the size of Soluna and you're looking at just the self-mining elements, and actually that is quite a small part of their overall whole business. But in February, even though they mined more Bitcoin, that achieved about $1.9 million of revenues. But achieving, a smaller production enabled them to get $2.5 million of revenues in the month of March, based on an average price they would have achieved during the month had they sold on a daily basis. And that extra $500,000 is like a nice 24-25% rise for them. And that's something that's really beneficial to the likes of Soluna and a lot of the smaller miners, able to get that extra revenues in that probably wasn't planned. If you're looking back to in January when the Bitcoin price was close to 40,000, nobody knew what would happen getting close to the halving. In fact, many people were thinking the Bitcoin price would drop, and we haven't seen that. We've seen it sort of rally all the way through, and so having that extra revenue there, is significant. And bear in mind, Soluna are a small miner with a market capitalization, probably less than about $10 million. And to achieve, one business stream that's bringing in sort of $2.5 million in a month, that's an annualized run rate for self-mining of 30 million. Yes, it will drop post the halving. So I don't want to let everyone, be fooled that they can go out there and it's they need to do some due diligence. But even if you look at half the revenues, the Bitcoin price is at the moment, that's still going to be $15 million of revenues for self-mining. And then they've also got the hosted position. They've also got their producing sites for other miners. And they're also going into the HPC, which we know from the likes of some of the other miners that we cover, it's very, very lucrative. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we come on to IREN.
Sure. So before we get into IREN, let's talk Bitfarms, Anthony, because this one I've probably received more questions about over the last few weeks than any other company. So let me kind of lay this out in terms of how I see this, Anthony. There's two main things going on right now. Number one is a leadership change. So we had Jeff Morphy leaving his post. They're looking for a new CEO going into halving. Obviously, this is a bit of a head scratcher as to why this would occur right now. However, on the other side of the coin, he hasn't left his position yet. Like we've seen with some other leadership changes, he seems to still be part of the company and actively involved. And we haven't seen a big dip in share price or any concerns about a ripple effect at this point in terms of other people leaving. So that one we don't have a ton of information about. We have reached out to Bitfarms. Obviously, they're going through an internal search. Not going to make comments on the leadership change until something's announced. But we do have that on our radar, and we are monitoring. We have been in contact with Bitfarms. The other one here, and actually just to step back a second, a lot of people that I've talked to have said, hey, you know what, Jeff was a strong finance background. They needed a finance guy to address the debt situation, which they did tremendously, bringing that debt down to zero. Maybe they're just looking for a different type of, I use the sports analogy, a different player for this portion of the season. So that's one topic there, Anthony. The next is this proposed ban on Bitcoin mining in Paraguay. So as we know, Bitfarms, along with some of the others, Marathon we cover on the channel, they operate in Paraguay. Bitfarms, it makes up a good portion of their portfolio. Now, for those of you who aren't super familiar with what's going on, basically on April 3rd, the National Congress in Paraguay, citing concerns about grid stability, illegal mining, power consumption, things like that, proposed a bill that would essentially put a ban on all crypto mining, Bitcoin mining, for 180 days or 6 months. Okay, so that has not been passed, that's proposed. Now, it's worth noting they did a very similar thing back in 2022 and it was not passed. It has to go through 3 levels of government, similar to in North America here. Now, that obviously could present a huge challenge for Bitfarms if it goes through and if it impacts all the regulated miners. Now, what's interesting about this, Anthony, is there's, again, kind of 2 sides to the fence here. On the one side, and I'll get a quote out of this article here, I quote, "If it becomes law, it would directly affect the 50 legal operating mining companies that have contracts with the National Energy Administration with contracts ranging from 5 to 100 megawatts." Okay, and that's from the Bitcoin analyst Joaquin Morengo. Now, we have, I know you've been in contact with Ben Ganon talking about the AIM Summit actually and going there. So we have been in contact with Ben. I'll let you comment on that. But from that side of the fence, it sounds like it could have an impact even to the legal miners. Now, on the other side, we understand that there's a lot of illegal mining activity going on in Paraguay. One thing I learned about Paraguay is they've actually got the most renewable energy, almost 100% hydropower of any country in the world. And they've got a lot of excess power. So they traditionally sell this to other countries, but because of the interest in Bitcoin mining, a lot of miners have actually come there for the cheap power and the nice benefit of saying it's renewable, right? So there's a lot of legal and there's a lot of illegal Bitcoin mining going on in this country. Now, the question is, Anthony, how is this going to impact Bitfarms and the share price? Well, the answer to that is it really hasn't impacted the share price too much at this point. Bitfarms, like the other miners, is up nicely pre-market here this morning. And generally, Anthony, if something like this was going to happen where it could have a massive impact on one of these companies, you would see that picked up in the market. Generally, the market's pretty good at understanding what's noise versus factual. So that's kind of the stage, Anthony, I've laid out for you. Now, I know you were chatting with Ben about the AIM Summit. What's your feeling on this situation?
I mean, obviously, when the initial news started to filter out about this, it was about the bad actors in Paraguay who were illegally tapping into the grid and mining Bitcoin. And just like we saw in Kazakhstan, when the ban affected China and miners were crossing the border there into Kazakhstan and just switching on, you got to remember some of these countries don't have the power infrastructure. They might have the power, but they don't have the infrastructure that of like a truly global country like China. And so it really affected Kazakhstan, and we saw the government there really come down, not just on illegal mining, but on all mining. Everything has to be regulated, and effectively they could sense when there were surges in power because they didn't have the massive infrastructure. I mean, Kazakhstan is just in terms of size of country, it's about the size of Europe, but it's got a population of about the size of London, just over, Greater London. So, it doesn't utilize a great deal of power. So when these mining companies go into countries like that there, it's going to have an issue. Now, Paraguay, from Bitfarms' perspective, at the moment, they've only got something like about 10 megawatts of power, providing about 0.3 exahash. That's due to change this year. I mean, in terms of getting to 21 exahash, so they're at 6.5 at the moment. So they've got to go, 200% more exahash than they've currently got. They actually plan to get that 0.3 exahash to 9.5 exahash. So that would be close to nearly half their business in Paraguay. I mean, certainly 40% in terms of operations there. So, hopefully the company will come out and, if they're losing 0.3 exahash at the moment, it's not a big thing. But I would imagine there's a lot of plans in place. Miners have been ordered. The only possible upside is the fact that Argentina there's a significant amount of potential power in the portfolio in Argentina. That's not fully utilized at the moment there. So, in terms of Paraguay, it was 170 megawatts, and in terms of Argentina, got 156 megawatts. But Argentina's not growing anywhere like Paraguay, so there might be an opportunity to use Argentina. But until we hear more, we don't really know how this impacts the likes of Bitfarms or the likes of Marathon Digital, who've both got businesses in Paraguay currently operating. And we'd expect, both companies to come out and put a statement out to say, it's an issue or we're dealing with it, or actually it's not an issue. It's just, a news story that's doing the rounds. And we've seen those as well before, where they don't effectively affect the company. But if you think about Bitfarms are paying significantly more for their power than Paraguay would be getting if it was selling it to like their neighbor Brazil. So they have an agreement where they can sell Brazil power at literally something like about 1 cent a kilowatt hour, and they're getting far more than that from the mining companies. So the ones that are official and regulated out there. So, this could be an impact to revenues that the country are going to stop receiving if this ban goes ahead. And so when you do things like that, is where does the gap for those revenues come from? So does that mean taxation and things like that? So, there's probably more to this than one statement in one article that we've seen there, but we'll wait for the companies to come out and give their version. If it's newsworthy, they might decide it's not newsworthy. They don't need to make a statement, but this was from a reliable source, and it's worth discussing on the podcast, and it's worth understanding if it's going to really impact Bitfarms.
Yeah, it sure is. I'll throw the quote up on the screen. It's from Forbes, Anthony. And the other thing that it brings up is this ban also prohibits the storage and trading of all cryptocurrencies. So not only will it have an impact or negative impact on the miners, but anyone who holds crypto. We know South America obviously has really jumped ahead in terms of crypto adoption. That would hinder their ability to operate in this ecosystem as well. So there may be some political downstream impacts in terms of voting and stuff. But this is exactly why we talk about on the channel geographic diversification, revenue diversification is so important, because you never know how these things can change, right? Imagine we saw something like this come out in Texas, Anthony, how monumental that would be for the industry, right? So we did talk to Ben on the program. They've been dealing with some of this jurisdictional risk and issues for quite some time. I know there was import restrictions on a lot of the machines originally in this country as well. So just one of the many reasons why maybe you don't want all your eggs in one basket. And again, Bitfarms does not have all their eggs in one basket. And Ben did say they have various different strategies if political landscapes change in any of their jurisdictions. So that's one.
We do know that these miners, when there is an issue, they can move quite quickly. They can move these machines really quickly. Obviously there's cases they need to try and source other areas. And the thing about having digital or cryptocurrency in country, I don't think that's an issue for Bitfarms or Marathon, because those would be part of a pool, and so therefore the benefits of the pool can be paid wherever they're paid to. So I don't think that's not. I don't think Bitfarms are having any Bitcoin physically in Paraguay. They might be providing hash rate to the pool, and the pool then dish out the rewards as the pool receives them. And so Bitfarms might have 6.5 exahash in one pool and get rewarded for that wherever the company headquarters is at that point in time. So I don't think that side's an issue. Like you say, we have to take a look at the statement in the Forbes article, and it says all mining is going to cease. We just need to wait for the companies to come out and say, is that what, from their perspective, that's what's happening?
Well, and you talk about relocating, Anthony. Maybe they just jump over to the other side of the Brazil border and they pick up 1 cent a kilowatt hour. Wouldn't that be a tail of the tape, eh? Okay, guys, so that's the update on Bitfarms. We are monitoring both of these situations very closely. We're in contact. Anthony's going to be meeting Ben and Jeff, the CFO, not Jeff, the former CEO, at the AIM conference in London there. So looking forward to seeing what we can dig up there as well. Now, the next one, Anthony, is IREN. This one, again, was up double digits in pre-market here before we started filming. A lot of buzz around IREN right now. And today we actually got an update on the HPC side of things, which was great to see. So we'll quickly walk through this one, Anthony. What was your take there?
Yeah, it's just an extension to the current contract. So IREN articulated a few months ago that they got a client poolside for a 3-month period with an option to extend. And that's exactly what's happened. So they've poolside have agreed an additional 4-month term, which commences literally post next week, and with an extension for a further 2 months if the customer decides. So that's potentially 6 months from now. Also, the actual number of GPUs servicing that agreement will literally double from the current 248 GPUs, and these are the NVIDIA H100 GPUs. So we've seen the likes of Bit Digital use these type of GPUs as well for their contracts, and we've seen how that's growing. So 248 at the moment, rising to 504. If you sort of do some of the sums that IREN provided previously and looked at how much the GPUs could earn in terms of revenues, and I think it was, if I remember rightly, I think it was something like $2.50 per hour per GPU. If you look at that as an annualized revenue now with 504 GPUs operating, that gets you sort of like $11 million of annualized revenue. Now, this is a contract from potentially 4 months to 6 months, and who knows what happens after that there. But the client is obviously very happy with the performance of this GPU cluster. And bear in mind, IREN have articulated as well that they're not offering the sort of the 5 nines. When we talk about HPC and AI, we're not talking about Bitcoin mining. We're talking about a reliability of a energy source that has to have generally, the big companies, the Amazons and the Microsoft of these worlds, will require 99.999% uptime. Because when you're providing those services, you can't afford to have downtime. It just affects the business. Now, what IREN and some of the other miners are probably looking at is having a sort of a service that's not quite at the 5 nines, but still a good service, and maybe it's not as expensive as the full service. So operating at a slightly lesser level, but they're seeing that they don't have to spend tens of millions of dollars to build the types of tier 3 infrastructure. They have good infrastructure for the mining companies, and yes, there'll be some enhancements to that, but not necessarily the full enhancement. So from IREN's perspective, they're creating a business that hasn't had as much intensive capital requirement, but has a really good potential return. And having this one client now could be the sort of the juggernaut to lead to more clients. And we know that they're expanding their number of GPUs as well. So I think they're looking to have I think they've got 816 GPUs in total. So there's still capacity there for more business. And we saw, Bit Digital, I think they got over 2,000, and they're looking to grow to over 4,000 GPUs, and that's how they're coming out with 100 million. So if you look at 800 NVIDIA GPUs, that's something like about 20% of what Bit Digital are expecting when they have their annualized 100 million growth, and that would put them about 20 million, which isn't too far away from the numbers using what IREN have already articulated. So you can sort of see there's plenty of optimism in this space, and I'm saying 85% of the North American miners are certainly either starting to look at this space or already buying the relevant GPUs and building out business units for these GPUs to go into, ready to offer the service.
Yeah, and we heard Sam Tabar say on the Bit Digital front, it's fairly intensive capex up front. And I know even Hut 8, they signed on Interior Health in BC when they got into HPC. I would imagine, Anthony, because of the higher upfront costs, because of the spec builds, because of the sensitivity of a lot of the industries that use HPC, I would expect these to be fairly sticky customers. So the fact that IREN was able to extend that deal makes sense. And yeah, like we've said, there's got to be something there, because there's so many companies that are just really excited about this opportunity.
I'm just gonna highlight, because I've just had a message from Ben as this podcast has been going on, and he's optimistic that it's not going to impact. I won't say his exact words, but he said it's not really going to impact Bitfarms, and so not to worry. And they haven't put anything out, and they don't know if they actually will put anything out about this, because again, it might not even be warranted to put something out. And we did discuss that 5 minutes ago. So thanks for Ben to come back and articulate that. As I say, his words were a little bit more choiceful, and not for the podcast, but actually, yeah, that puts probably a lot of people's minds at rest. And as you say, if this was real news, and you've got a company with potentially 40% of the business going into Paraguay this year, that would have been picked up, and the share price would have been sort of like getting a hammering today, and actually over the last few months, but it hasn't, and hopefully what we push out on our podcast will let that retail investment cohort that kindly support the channel and watch the podcast, it'll give them some sort of knowledge and hope that they're in the right place.
Yeah, there's a little late Easter egg present for you guys who stuck around in the video. So thanks, Anthony, for throwing that in, and very timely. Ben, good job getting that text over when you did. We're just about to wrap up. So I'm just noticing, Anthony, I'm looking, Bitcoin is just shy of $72,000 US. Most of the miners are up anywhere from 5 to 6%. This should be a very exciting week for us, you guys. I think personally at some point here in the next few days, this halving FOMO is going to kick in, and we're going to see Bitcoin really start to move in that next leg up, maybe into the $75,000 range is my kind of next term. Again, guess here, you guys, this is not financial advice, but I think we've been consolidating and trading sideways for long enough. I think we're ready for the next move here. So time will tell if I'm right or not, Anthony. I appreciate your thoughts. Great job getting a hold of Ben for the Bitfarms follow-up. IREN, Soluna, Cores, you guys, a lot of news starting off the week. And we'll be back here tomorrow to keep you updated. If you're still watching, hit the like button. Feel free to subscribe. Anthony, I'll kick it to you for any closing thoughts.
Yeah, a nice green start to the week. We've got Bitcoin price. It's already been over 72,000 this morning. It was there 3 weeks ago when it reached its all-time high. Halving is, 12 days away now, and the Bitcoin price just seems to be getting stronger. So maybe we're seeing a different halving than previously. But yeah, it's the miners are all green, not as high as they were in pre-market. Market's been open for about 15 minutes, but we're still got some green shoots there. I always get this wonder about the Bitcoin price. Obviously I'm in the UK, and so I'm up at quite a few hours before you, Bryce, and obviously Asia. The Bitcoin price tends to do well in Asia and through the morning here in Europe. But as soon as it gets to sort of like 2:30 in the US and North America, we sort of see that sort of turn. I just wonder, if someone ever did these statistics of how the Bitcoin price affects in different time zones throughout the day like that, when investors are sort of more actively using it, the markets, because it just generally that 2:30 or sort of 9:30 Eastern time, at 2:30 in the UK, we sort of see the Bitcoin price pull back, and the share prices all seem to sort of pull back as well at the same time. That's a fairly regular occurrence, but be interested if someone's got the stats on that.
That's when all the Wall Street big bankers start shorting Bitcoin for the week, Anthony. They get up and start pre-market trading. Who knows? I have noticed that trend though as well. I always get up in the middle of the night and often text Anthony. I saw last night it was almost at $100,000 Canadian. I was so excited, and then I wake up and sure enough it's pulled back a little. But hey, that's the game we play here, Anthony. Thanks so much for your time. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.